So as I said yesterday, the one thing you can count on for technology is for it not to work when you want to. Okay. So yesterday, Alhamdulillah, we started the topic of lectures for this series, which is called Finding Faith, Holding On to Faith When the World Falls Apart. And lessons in resistance and resilience from Imam Hussain alayhi salam and Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam. So just to give a very quick, brief recap of what we started talking about today, we said that the purpose of Azadari cannot be different than the purpose for which Imam Hussain alayhi salam left his home. So in other words, our purpose for attending Azadari has to be connected to his purpose of his mission, of why he left his house, why he left his home, why he sacrificed his family. And like we said yesterday, the purposes were at least three, right? One of them was reform of the Ummah. We know that the Ummah had kind of deviated. It had lost the values which the Prophet, Imam Ali alayhi salam, stood for, and it was going in a direction which you couldn't even recognize it as Islam, right? So the first thing was reform. The second thing, and very connected to it, was waking up the people, awareness, right? We said that the reason why Islam came in this world and the reason why Imam Hussain had to do his mission was for two reasons. One was to eradicate jahalat, and the other one was to eradicate zulm. So making people aware, fighting unawareness, fighting, this kind of distraction that we find ourselves in, right? The Prophet ﷺ told us that die before you die, right? And the way Mufassirin, the way scholars explain that is that all of us are kind of living in a stupor. And that today is more, this is the amazing thing about our faith and about Quran, is that it gets more relevant with time. Right? So we are more distracted today, more kind of unconscious than we've ever been. And also there's, at the same time, the opposite is also true, right? So making people aware, fighting ignorance and resistance against injustice. And so we also said that change in society cannot happen without some level of personal sacrifice. And this is, kind of makes us all very uncomfortable. And we will continue this today and make ourselves more uncomfortable to understand what are we really asking for. And yesterday we said, one of the things that kind of gets us stuck and keeps us where we are is this idea that what can we do? We don't know what to do. What we do will not make a difference. And we will answer this question, inshallah, throughout this series, okay? So, and the verse that we have chosen is from Surah Fussilat, Hamim Sajda, which tells us that we need to have, those who believed and then had istiqamat, summa istaqamu. And so throughout the season and yesterday, what we started was exploring this meaning of what does istiqamat mean. And we said that istiqamat is kind of a stand. It is being very strong, being inflexible in the face of truth, okay? And so first of all, what these people do that this verse is talking about is they say, Qalu Rabbuna Allah, means they say that our God is Allah, and then they have istiqamat. So it is, in essence, first and foremost, a clarity of identity. We are not wishy-washy, right? If we say, we believe in God, then our actions kind of have to show it. And the Mufassirin tell us that istiqamat is very much about aligning your external belief with external actions with your internal belief, okay? And the example we gave was of salah. Salah is the, something that we all do, which is istiqamat. No matter how busy we are, we take time for it, and we can improve the istiqamat of our salah. How? By making sure that we do it properly, by making sure that we have presence of mind. So this is how we kind of build our, our muscles of istiqamat. And so the second part of it is that there is a refusal to deviate under pressure. So we know that this life is full of pressures, and today, inshallah, we will, definitely talk about that. And, see what we can do to stand in the face of all of these pressures that kind of lead us astray. And we said that, when we do this, when we have this posture of istiqamat, Allah gives us good news, what? That He sends angels. He sends these unseen forces to help us. And these forces tell us what? Do not fear, do not grieve. And these are the things that kind of fear is a very big thing that takes us away. Fear of the unknown, fear of being uncomfortable, fear of what people will say, fear of being excluded, whatever that is, okay? So we said that this divine promise is kind of helps us on our path. And so, we started about talking about that. We see examples of this istiqamah throughout our life today. And of course, the biggest one is Imam Hussain alayhi salam, right? Which we will keep coming back to again and again. And, one of the things that we have to see in these examples, for example, there is somebody called Stephen Biko. Has anyone heard about this? This was the guy who kind of started the Black consciousness movement. He was killed in police custody way before Black Lives Matter, way before anything, but his life became kind of a battle cry. So yesterday we said that, throughout when Imam Hussein's murder was being revenged, they said this is for Hussain. This is in revenge of Hussain. So similarly, after Biko died, his life became like Biko lives became the slogan for people who were resisting oppression, right? We know Dr. Martin Luther King, right? That he did not achieve what he wanted in his lifetime, but the dream lives on. He today, and it's very interesting how people called him a rebel, a terrorist while he was alive. And yet today, everyone kind of agrees that he was the start of, Black freedom in the USA. One thing that gives us a lot of hope, I'm sure all of you have been following Zohrain Mamdani in New York, who despite everything, despite billions of dollars being spent on against him, is, managed to win the primary, which is a huge achievement, right? It cannot be understated. Now, the thing is that before we get too excited, that he has won, we have to kind of know that his story has not finished yet, right? It's very much in progress and we don't know how it's going to end. But here's the thing, and this is what we want to take away from his story. No matter how it ends, victory in the cause of truth is the process, is the fact that you did not compromise. Right? So all of these people, whether, and this is the thing, when we pray for something, when we are working towards something, our goal is that we should see success. Okay. And as I talk to myself through this, I'm saying that's highly egoistic. That A, Allah should follow my timeline. B, I should exactly see what I'm working for, right? We have to understand that the truth against injustice, the truth for, fighting jahalat, is not a one lifetime thing. It's not going to end with us. We may or may not see, and we are seeing a lot of progress. Okay, I don't want to minimize that. And inshallah, at some point we will talk about that. But we have to understand that, these are things that Shaitan tells us to keep us stuck. And if nothing else, hopefully after, these few lectures, we will come to stop making excuses. Stop telling ourselves things which are clearly not true. That I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. I don't know what is happening. I'm not into politics, any of that. Okay, so at the minimum, that's our goal. Okay. So the things that these figures share with Imam Hussain is what? That they were all outmatched by material power, right? Whether it was Martin Luther King, whether it's Zohrain Mamdani today. They are fighting the odds. They are still standing for their values, right? Regardless of what people are saying. And their death, and, we pray for safety and, that Allah may continue to protect and guide people who are on this path. But reality is some of them don't make it, right? And that does not mean defeat. That does not mean defeat. I mean, if the lesson of Karbala teaches us that, right? That apparent defeat in this world is not defeat, okay? And that's why, by the way, oppression kind of increases as resistance increases. This is another lesson that we have to remind ourselves. And that, by the way, is not a signal of our defeat. It's sign that we're on the right path. Because we've seen, look at Firaun in the Quran. When he couldn't control the people, he kept on upping the oppression, right? And then how was he defeated? By someone he nurtured in his own thing. So Allah has his own plans. And when we come to talk about trust and tawakkul, we will. So can we have a salawat? So today, inshallah, we will talk about the other end of the thing, which is yesterday we started talking about resistance, and today we'll start talking about resilience. We'll talk about, what resilience means, in our personal lives, because here's the thing, if we are not strong internally, we are no good for anyone else. If we collapse, we cannot help anybody else. So, and resilience doesn't only mean that we are only fighting injustice, it's about our daily living, okay? What it means, why is it important? And then very importantly, we have to talk about the purpose of trials. Why are we given so many trials? Why is this life not easy? Okay. And how do we respond when trials hit, and how we can become a bit more resilient? So it's a very big topic. I'll try to do at least a little bit of justice to it. And inshallah, at least we'll begin today. So salawat. So in verse 153 of Surah Baqarah, which all of us are familiar with, Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu, ista'inu bis sabri was salah, inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. What does it mean? O you who believe, seek assistance through patience and prayer. Surely Allah is with the patient. So what this verse suggests, because Allah is saying, seek assistance through, right? What does that mean? That sabr, in essence, is a tool. It's a tool to help us when challenges hit. Now, I've spoken a lot about sabr over the years. I'm not going to go over the very basics, but, just reminding ourselves that sabr does not equal passive patience. That is only one part of sabr, right? And we know that sabr is so much more than that. So today, what we will be using sabr as, we will kind of translate sabr as resilience. And what is resilience? Before we even talk about resilience, we have to remind ourselves, and I heard this in a lecture recently, I think it was in the month of Ramadan, where the speaker said, and it really hit me, right, that our trials are not random. Sometimes we think, why me, right? Why is this happening to me? So we have to believe and we have to understand that when Allah sends us a trial, it is meant for us. And we'll talk about why. But so the fact that you and me are living in this time, that we are seeing this injustice, that it's not random. He has a plan and he wants us to respond in a certain way, right? So Viktor Frankl, who also I've spoken a lot about, some of you may have know him, his work, he said, we do not ask life what the meaning of life is. So when did he write this? When he was imprisoned in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, right? So he said, we do not ask life what the meaning of life is. Life asks us, what is the meaning of your life? Life is asking us, what is the meaning of your life? And life demands our answer. In other words, we have to ask ourselves, what is our role and responsibility given the challenges that I face myself, okay? So first thing that we have to remind ourselves for resilience, trials are guaranteed, right? Allah tells us in the Quran that do men think that they will be left alone saying we believe, right? And not be tried? No, he says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. We have always tried people before you. So we are not immune. Just because we have a lot more resources and we think we are independent and autonomous, it does not save us from trials, right? And then in Surah Baqarah, again, verses that we are all familiar with, he tells us what kinds of trials we will face. So he says, we will certainly try you with somewhat of fear and hunger and loss of property and lives and fruits, and give good news to the patients. And we all repeat this all the time, that when calamity strikes, when misfortune befalls these people, what do they say? They say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. Meaning what? Meaning they remind themselves of the temporariness of this world. Number one, we cannot understand misfortune, we cannot understand calamity, we cannot understand oppression if our view is only of this world. Everything makes sense when you understand this is not the end of the thing. This world is not a place for accountability. That is to come later, okay? So now we know that when we're hit with sabr, that we will be tried, number one. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to respond with sabr. But we also have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of trials, right? Because we know Allah does not do anything random, and He's not doing anything to make our lives hard. This is what we have to really, when we're going through hard times, it's very, very hard to convince ourselves of this. But what does the word fatanna, which in Surah Ankabut Allah uses for trials, right? What does the word mean? It means to purify gold. It means to purify gold. How is gold purified? By putting it in a furnace and burning it, right? That's how gold is purified. So if everyone could just take a minute to make sure their phones are switched off, please, Salawat. So Imam Hussain alayhi salam defined fitna as that which proves man's reality, his divine origin, by what appears to be affliction, turmoil, and trouble. Divine mercy puts man through processes that appear to be undesirable and troublesome in order that he might grow. Okay. And Imam Ali alayhi salam said, many a person who's afflicted is made stronger by his affliction. Now let's look at the English definition of resilience. In English, resilience is generally defined as returning back to normal. Something happens, right? You get sick. If you're resilient, if your immune system is resilient, you'll go back. Like you'll go back to health, okay? And the same thing, it talks about all the challenges. So, when something happens, when challenges hit us, we kind of have some options. At that point, it's hard to see, okay? But if you just take a step back, say, that somebody's been diagnosed with a major disease, okay? They still have options. What are the options? One is to collapse, to drown in our misfortune, to tell ourselves we have no options, woe be to me, that is an option, right? And, taking it really far, and we'll talk a little bit about this, that when something major happens, some people, you get trauma. Everyone's heard the word trauma now, right? It's become like a buzzword almost. So that's one option. What's the second option? The second option is that you drown for a while, you kind of collapse for a while, and then you recover. You recover and you get back to where you were before, right? Those are your two options. But there's a third option, which very few people, and even psychologists, psychotherapists talk about this very, very little, but it is in the literature, that you have something. So everyone's heard of PTSD, right? PTSD is what? Post-traumatic stress disorder. Something major happens to you, you don't have the resources to cope, and you end up with trauma, which kind of follows you for a long, long time till you go through a long period of healing, okay? However, not everybody gets trauma. When they have the same things, not everyone gets trauma. Some people have what is called post-traumatic growth, that they grow as a result of what happened to them, okay? And there's very kind of, we can tell which people are going to go down that path, right? And so when we talk about resilience in Islam, when we talk about sabr, when we talk about, how we get back to functioning, we have to understand that if our faith is giving us trials and troubles in order for us to grow, it's much more aligned with this very optimistic view of human beings. That even when something really tragic happens, you have options, and B, you can not only recover, but be better, okay? Now, I do want to give a little bit of a warning and disclaimer here, okay? This is here. As we're hearing, we will be thinking of someone who's going through a hard time and who says, I have trauma, woe be to me. This is not the purpose. This is not the purpose, okay? We are not going to take this material, take this content and do victim blaming, please. This will be the opposite of what the intention is, okay? This is a very complicated subject, as you can imagine. There are mountains written on it, and there is a lot that we can discuss, and we simply don't have a time in a format like this, okay? So what is my purpose here? my purpose here is not to tell you that it's so easy. If you're going through challenging, just, just pull up your bootstraps and go on with your life. And why aren't you growing as a result? Again, what research shows that we call it in one of the modalities is called finding the treasure. Finding the treasure is something that happens after post-traumatic growth. When you look back on the time, you recognize that, oh, actually, I really grew in that time, okay? Finding the treasure does not happen while you're having the breakdown or the trauma, okay? So one of the things, and we really need to, really become much better as a community at validating and supporting people going through challenges. So for now, all I'm asking is don't use this on anyone else. Okay, please don't use this on anyone else. This is for ourselves. And if you're going through a really hard time, nobody's telling you, why aren't you better? Because there are other things that we'll talk about in a bit. Okay, so with that disclaimer, some psychologists tell us, and again, this is the minority, it's not, like everyone, resilience is that ineffable quality that allows some people to be knocked down by life and come back stronger than ever. They find a way to rise from the ashes, okay? And, the point is that we don't know what we're capable of until we are put in that situation. So all of us, right? Think of a challenging time in the past that you had, not something you're going through right now, but something in the past that you kind of overcame, you went through. Okay? As you look back on it, can you find some benefit in it? Can you see how you even if you just survived something that you thought would kill you, because it seems so big at that time, right? And here you are still standing. So we've all kind of gone through this, and we need to remind ourselves, is this something we would have chosen for ourselves? Who says we would have chosen what we went through? No, nobody would choose this. And the reality is, when you are given circumstances which are really challenging, the point is to make it easier on us than harder. So there are some things that we do that make it easier and some things that we do that make it harder. Okay? So again, this idea of growing is that resilience, when it talks about just bouncing back, can you go back in time? It's not possible, right? Even if you say health-wise, I am resilient, I bounce back. No, your body is different. It has changed as a result of what happened to you, right? People who kind of become stronger are those who use what happened and use it to wake up, to grow, okay? So now, post-traumatic growth, interestingly, is about moving beyond your initial level of functioning. So say before you felt sick, you were at an 8 out of 10, okay? You felt really sick, you kind of a wake up thing, whatever, and you worked and you worked. You had to work really hard. This was not easy. You didn't choose it. And you worked really hard. What post-traumatic growth says, that in some areas of your life, you might become a 9 or an 8.5. So it goes beyond. And this is very much in alignment with why Allah is giving us the troubles that He has chosen for us. Okay. So how is this? And one person called it anti-fragility. He said, and Nassim Taleb, that's his name, he says that, wind, it extinguishes a candle, right? If you blow on a candle, it extinguishes. What happens when you blow on a fire? Become stronger, right? So he says some people are like that. They're anti-fragile, that the more you kind of suppress them, the more they become stronger. Now, let's take a very current example. The nation of Iran has been under sanctions for how long? Sorry, at least 3 decades, if not more, right? 3 decades that I can remember. And no access to outside thing, they've literally been shunned by the world, not given, like economic sanctions are a very hard thing. If people who have been lucky enough to go to Iran, does it look like a impoverished nation which has been suffering? Yeah. Do you know it has a 98% literacy? Do you know that there are more science graduates who are women in Iran than anywhere else on the planet, compare like in terms of diversity. So the more people crush them, what happened? They focused on themselves and they used it as fuel to grow. We see the Palestinians every single day and we look at them and we say, how? How is this happening? That they have literally lost everything. The children, and now it's like really post, but say a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, they were still smiling, laughing, trying to carry on life, right? So istiqamah, think of it as a stand, okay? It's a path. And sabr or resilience are the tools that kind of help you stay on the path, okay? Sabr is the stance and the istiqamah is the stance and sabr is the muscle that helps you hold that stance. So now let's come to some research on resilient people. Okay, so why is it that some people grow from adversity and some people collapse? So the number one thing is that they accept pain and they realize that it's part of life. So they don't say, why me? Okay. And this is what we mean by, having faith that when God tells you that we will surely try you. So when it happens to them, they're not like, oh no, what happened? Something's gone wrong. No, they expect it, right? This is part of being alive. The second thing is they don't minimize or numb their pain. They don't minimize or numb their pain. Now, given that I deal with emotions all day long, obviously I have a lot to say, but I'm watching the time. And I will say only this much, that having emotions is not the problem. Allah has given you emotions. He has made your body to feel. Do you know that when you cry, there are 3 different types of tears? Do you know that when you cry with emotion, those are different than when your tears are watering because you have allergies? The composition of those tears is different. When you cry out of emotion, those tears are full of stress-releasing hormones. They make you, we've all experienced this, having a good cry, right? So it's not about having emotions. So, when people tell us, oh, have sabr, please, let's not tell each other that, right? Like, did the prophets, did they not have patience? They had patience, right? And they cried a lot, okay? We need to learn from them. The thing is that, we cannot selectively switch off emotions. What does that mean? So I don't want, what are the kind of emotions I don't want? I don't like sadness. I don't like grief. I don't like revenge. I don't like resentment. I don't like guilt. I don't like all of these emotions. What emotions do I want to feel? I want to feel happy. I want to feel joy. I want to feel love for my kids and spouse. I want to feel all of these things. But if you think of, has everyone seen a switchboard? Like, where the fuses are in your house? You know how some you can switch it on and off, right? So emotions we think are like that. Okay, I'll switch this one on, off, off. Okay, but it's not like that. The emotions are all controlled by a master switch. Master switch means what? That you can either have it on, which means you will feel all the feels, right? Or you have it off. You can have it off, which means what? That you cannot have empathy for somebody else. You cannot have compassion. You cannot feel grief. You cannot feel love. And if you think that that's what Islam wants, there is so much written about how hard-heartedness, the lack of feeling, is actually one of the most significant spiritual illnesses we can have. And we can see what lack of empathy has done in the world. Again, going back to the thing, like we've all watched so much that, now it's just like, okay, like it's just all the same, like how much more? But then when you see a random person at an airport, not even in a conflict-based country, bashing a child, just bashing a child till they're in coma, right? You know that this is what the Quran refers to as asfala safilin. These are not animals, because animals have feelings. Animals will not kill or hunt for no reason. So lack of emotion is not what we're after. When you are going through hard times, grief is an appropriate response. When we are feeling sad or even sorry for ourselves, it's okay. The problem happens when we mix emotion and action. I'm angry. Great. Allah has given you that anger to pinpoint the fact that something in your life needs attention, that you need to take care of something. Great. That's a feeling. What's an action? Is breaking a bat over somebody's head. That doesn't follow. Those are two different things. So we can feel emotions and we need to regulate our actions, right? And this is not, by the way, I can tell you this 100 times. You will need to tell yourself this 100 times. It's not something that comes automatically to us, right? So resilient people are not the ones who show no emotion, okay? They have emotion, but they don't let their feelings dictate their actions, okay? And then they focus on what they can control. So imagine something's happened, okay? Someone's fallen sick, you've lost someone big, you've been betrayed, something major has happened in your life. That is outside your control. You cannot do anything about it. But there are still a lot of things in your control. So say something's happened, okay? Say you've lost your job. Not in your control. Here is the situation. Do you have control over anything? No, really? You don't have control over anything because you've lost your job. Really? Can you make your bed in the morning? Can you feed yourself? Can you take a shower? Right? There is still a lot of things in our control, but see how automatic it is. We tell ourselves we have no control. So resilient people recognize things that are outside their control and things that are inside their control. So here's the thing. If my goal is healing from something that's happened to me, okay? There are things that I can do which will help and things that I do which will not help. So if I've lost my job, for example, will it help not to make my bed? Will it help to make my bed? It actually will, right? Because it gives me some sort of agency, some sort of control over my own life. So this is what I'm talking about, right? We have to keep asking ourselves, is what I'm doing, if the way I'm thinking, not feeling, the way I'm thinking, the way I'm acting, is it helping me? Is it taking me towards my goal or is it taking me away from my goal? Make sense? Okay, so tomorrow, inshallah, we'll just end this topic by talking about some of the basic things that we can do to build everyday resilience, right? Even when we're not like having a major crisis. Yeah. So now let's take our hearts to the plains of Karbala. Today is the 2nd of Muharram, the day that Imam and his companions are rising on the plains. Let us use our imagination to see what the journey must have been like. It is said that it took him 4 months to make Imam's way to Karbala. They first headed to Makkah, a city that had been declared a place of amana and safety. But here's the thing, that while Imam is in Makkah, news reaches him that they will murder him there. And so he has to leave. Meanwhile, letter after letter is reaching Hussain. The mound of appeals is getting larger and larger. Come to Kufa. We will support you in the struggle against Yazid. The dates have ripened, O Imam. Our hearts are anxious and yearning. We can no longer bear this separation. So what will Hussain do? We already know that while he's doing the tawaf, he has to leave. And he is starting his resistance even while he's at Makkah. As people are coming for the pilgrimage, he is seen leaving. Who will join Hussain as he heads towards Iraq? The martyrdoms of the family of Ali Muhammad had obviously already begun. On the way to Kufa, Imam receives news that Muslim has been killed. When he gets the news, Imam goes to Zainab. Bring me Akhil's young daughter, he said. I want to see Hamida. Imam shows great love and affection. He asks for some earrings to be brought and he puts these on. Then he pats her head and says, from today, Hamida, I am your father and Ali is your brother. Hamida has grown up in the household of the Ahlul Bayt. She senses that something has changed. She has seen this behavior before. Orphans are patted on the head like this, she thinks. Have I become yatim? She asks Ammu, why are you treating me like a yatim? And I wonder if Sakina is watching this from a distance, sensing what it means. She too has grown up knowing that the orphans of Ahlul Bayt are showered with love and dignity. But little does she know when her turn comes, there will be no gentle hand to wipe her tears. No, my mom, your daughter will not get earrings when you are killed on the day of Ashura. Instead, she will get slaps. They will snatch away her earrings and instead make her tiny ears bleed, O Imam. On the second day of Muharram, Imam comes upon a land where his horse stops and it will not move forward. Imam calls for the people of the land. What is the name of this place, O Banu Asad? They responded, Taf ya Hussain, and Shatul Furat, and Al Ghamim, and Nainawa. Imam is not satisfied. Does it have another name? An old man speaks up and says, O son of Zahra, what can I tell you about this land? It is the land of calamity. Whoever has come here has found calamity. It does not suit the awliya of Allah. Go back. This is the land of Karbala. Indeed, this is the place of Karban Babala, sorrow and afflictions. Oh, my family, we have arrived. Abbas, he says, this is our final resting place. Let us pitch our tents here. This is where our men will be killed, O Abbas. This is where our children will be slaughtered. This is the place where our women will be taken captive after they burn our tents and loot our families. Here is where we will pitch our tents, O Abbas. This is where the blood will be shed and our bodies will be buried. This is what my grandfather has informed me. With every step, Hussain is teaching this ummah what it means to stand when the world sits in silence, what it means to be alone yet undefeated. Ye ruh Hussain ki hai, jism Ali ka hai, ye qafila nahi hai, paigam hai sabr ka. Oh, my mom, you have arrived in Karbala and you are about to change this land forever. You are going to transform it. From the land of Karban Bala, your holy blood will transform this land to Karbala al-Mu'alla. It will make it a place of healing and mercy, a place where prayers are answered and supplications are granted. Oh, our Imam, please open the doors and invite us to this land that you have called Karbala. It is said that when Zainab first came to Karbala, she did not want to stay there. Can we move from this land, oh brother? I do not fight peace. I can hear the heartbreaking cries of a mother crying for her son. Oh brother, let us move from here. Zainab says, Hussain, do you not recognize this voice, my sister? It is the voice of our mother, Zahra. وَسَعَلْمُ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّامًا فَلَبِي إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ